Hello, and welcome to my Inspirational Ingrid channel. I hope you're all well. Here I am again with episode number 27. Let's talk about Michal. Let's talk about Michal. So, like I said, I've been doing a series and a walk through the Bible of women since January 2025, and it's where I first started with ladies like Eve, Sarah, Hagar, went all the way through, and I had some ladies like Leah, Tamar, Dinah, Deborah, Rahab, Abigail, and then further down I had some naughty ones like Delilah, Jezebel, again, some queens, Queen Esther, Queen Sheba. And last week, I think I did King Lemuel's mother. So as I'm doing this walk through the Bible, I'm coming in and out of the Bible. I'm not actually doing it in sequence. So that's why now I'm actually doing the one on Michal, or Michal. I don't know how you say it. Michal. But yeah, this is my one on her and how her relationship was with King David. So before I actually go into my session today, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because like I said, this really helps me out. So let's crack on. Okay, so like I said, we're in episode 27 and we're looking at the woman called Michal, or Michal, and her backstory. Okay, so before I actually talk about her, I'm going to talk about what happened. Okay, so her father is actually King Saul. She is the daughter of King Saul, who many of you know. And King Saul actually, he was actually king. He was quite a bad king at times. He started off well and became a bad king. He got jealous of David, even before David became king and took over from him, because David was very good. David killed Goliath, and people were praising David so much for all his triumphs and his victories. And so Saul got very jealous of David. And of course, David was also anointed to be king. So, of course, Saul didn't want him to become king. All right. So, anyway, going back into the story, there's a section in the story where King Saul is actually saying to David, "Oh, I want you to marry my eldest daughter. Yeah, my eldest daughter is called Merab, and I want you to marry her." And so David said, "Well, I don't think I am worthy of being your son-in-law." This is what David said to Saul. So in fact, King Saul actually gave his daughter, Merab, to someone else. So she was given to someone else instead of David, okay? And so now we're actually going to start in the actual story. So Michal is actually found in the 1 Samuel chapter 18, yeah? And that goes from verse 20, and then it goes again in 2 Samuel chapter 6, and that goes from verses 9 to 23, all right? So, Michal. Who is Michal? She's a beautiful young Israelite woman. She grew up in Gibeah, which is actually the royal city of King Saul. And like I said, she was the youngest daughter of King Saul, because she shouldn't really have married, like I said, David, because her eldest sister was actually the one that should have married David. But obviously David didn't want to marry her. So now David marries Michal before he actually becomes king. Okay, so she's actually been had an arranged marriage because she actually loved him. She actually loved David. Okay, and so King Saul knew that, and so he actually arranged the marriage between them. But it wasn't said that David actually loved Michal. Yeah, so just so you know. So it's also known that Michal didn't actually have any children. Like I said, she was married to David, but they didn't have any children together. Okay, so she was actually known to be barren. And the actual story is actually quite a sad story as well, because it actually talks about how love can actually go wrong, and how love, even with love, you cannot actually hold on to someone who's dear to you. Okay, so that's what I mean. And like I said, these series that I do about women in the Bible, they actually relate to women today. Many of the stories actually relate to women today. And I'm sure there's a woman that has a story that relates to Michal. Okay, that relates to Michal. Because as you know, many women in the Bible, marriages have been arranged. And so, in real life, there's actually many marriages that are actually arranged. Arranged. I can't actually say it today. What's going on? It's the heat. Yeah. There's many marriages that have been arranged, whether it's through cultural, whether it's through royalty, whether it's through, politics, whatever it is. We know that, arranged marriages is not actually, it is actually quite the norm, should I say. It's actually quite the norm. I can't speak today. I really can't. It's like, God help me. Let me get these words out. Anyway, so going back to Michal, the story of the Michal. In Hebrew, her name actually means who is like God. Who is like God, okay? And so there's three main characters in this story. So you have King Saul, you have David, who before he becomes the king, and you also have Michal herself. So I'm going to start off in 1 Samuel chapter 18, and it's going to be from verses 20 to 30, okay? Verses 20 to 30, okay? And then also later on, I'll actually go to chapter 19, which is verses 1 to 17. But I won't be saying it all because it's quite a lot, right? So let's actually start the story from verse 20. 1 Samuel chapter 18, verse 20. And it says, Now Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David. And when they told Saul about it, he was pleased. I will give her to him, he thought, so that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. So Saul said to David, now you have a second opportunity to become my son-in-law. So if you can remember, he had an opportunity earlier to marry King Saul's daughter called Merab. But he declined. David actually declined it. So now it's time that King Saul's actually saying, you can now marry my daughter Michal. And in actual fact, King Saul was quite naughty here. Yeah, King Saul was quite naughty. So the way he was naughty was, not only is David going to marry his daughter, Michal, who actually loves David. She just adores him. Yeah. So King Saul's thinking, great, my daughter's going to be happy. I can actually see where David is. David is my enemy. And in actual fact, the Philistines might kill him. Yeah. You know that saying where you say you keep your enemies close? That's exactly where King Saul was going with this one. Yeah, because look what it says. It says, she may be, his daughter he's talking about, she may be a snare to him so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. What a tricky King Saul he is. So let's carry on. Okay. This is what Saul says. Then Saul ordered his attendants, speak to David privately and say, look, the king likes you and his attendants all love you. Now become his son-in-law. Right? They repeated these words to David, but David said, do you think it is a small matter to become the king's son-in-law? I'm only a poor man and I'm little known. Yeah. They repeated these words. And so when Saul's servants told him, and David said, Saul replied, say to David, the king wants no other prize for the bride than 100 Philistines' foreskins. Yeah, to take revenge on his enemies. So Saul's plan was to have David fall by the hands of the Philistines. So when the attendant told David these things, he was pleased to become the king's son-in-law. So before the allotted time elapsed, David took his men with him and went out and killed 200 Philistines and brought back their foreskins. They counted out the full number to the king so that David might become the king's son-in-law. Then Saul gave him his daughter Michal in marriage. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy for the rest of his days. The Philistines' commander continued to go out to battle, and as often as they did, David met with more success than the rest of Saul's officers, and his name became well known. Oh my goodness. So look at this. King Saul tries to trick David, right? He tries to put him in the hands of the Philistines. But again, David beats the Philistines. He kills them. He has the victory over them. And time after time, every time that David goes to battle now, he wins. He has the victory and he has success because The Lord was with David. The Lord was with David. And Saul became even more afraid of him. And Saul became even more jealous and envious of him. Sorry, like I said, my words are not coming out today. God help me. Please help me. So now, if we go further down into chapter 19, it actually says that now Saul is fed up. King Saul is fed up with David now. Not only is his son-in-law, not only is he one of the best warriors, in his troops and in his field, that he just needs to kill the guy. He needs to kill the man now. This is just too much, far too much, okay? So Saul orders his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill him. However, King Saul's son Jonathan loves David. He absolutely dotes on him as a brother would. He treats him like a brother, and he's a very good friend of his. So Jonathan actually said to Saul, how can you not kill him? This is God's servant. You can't kill him. He's not done anything to you, right? The Lord has won a great victory over Israel, and you saw it. Why do you want to kill an innocent man like David? So this is what King Saul says. So this is 1 Samuel chapter 19, and I'll read it from verse 4. Jonathan spoke well of David to his Saul, his father, and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He has not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why would you then do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? Saul listened to Jonathan and took his oath. As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death. Okay, so this is the oath that King Saul made. So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. Once more war broke out, and David went out to fight the Philistines. He struck them with such a force that they fled before him. But an evil spirit from the Lord came on Saul, and he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand. When David was playing the lyre, Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear. But David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. And that night, David made good his escape. So Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, if you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be killed. So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and he escaped. Then Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment and putting some goat's hair on the head. When Saul sent the men to capture David, Michal said, he is ill. Then Saul sent the men back to see David and told them, bring him up to me in his bed so that I may kill him. But when the men entered, there was the idol in the bed, and at the head was some goat's hair. Saul said to Michal, why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escaped? Michal told him, he said to me, let me get away. Why should I kill you? So, as you can see, Michal, this is Michal now. Michal was coming into her own. Now, if you can remember, I said that she absolutely loved and doted on David. She absolutely adores him. So that means that even her own father, right, she didn't even obey her own father. She loved this guy so much. She helped David get away through a window. Yeah, she let him down out of the window. He escaped. And she told the soldiers now that he's ill. So really, she was biding time so that David could actually flee as far as he could. So when King Saul said, bring David in his bed and I'll kill him. I don't care if he's ill. So basically, the soldiers went to get him and saw that it was only an idol in the bed with goat's hair. When you read these stories, they're just so funny sometimes, It's like a little comedy sketch, where there's an idol in the bed, like you'd say, like it's a mannequin in the bed with hair on its head. I mean, that was just so funny, wasn't it? And so King Saul says to his daughter, his youngest daughter, Michal, he says, why did you deceive me and let my enemy escape? And so Michal said, oh, he was actually going to kill me. So, I had to let him go, which is another lie. Because David was not going to kill her at all. David was not even going to harm a hair on her head. And I'm not talking about the goat's hair, okay? So this is what was quite funny about it, okay? So let's now move to 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 9 to 23. So during this process, right, David is still winning success. He's no longer with King Saul, and he's actually married other women in between of him leaving Michal. Michal also is actually given away to another man as well. Okay, so this is what's been going on. So let me just read it to you now. 2 Samuel chapter 6, verses 9 to 23. It's a long one, but I'll skip over some of it. David was afraid of the Lord that day and said, "How can the ark of the Lord ever come to me?" He was not willing to take the ark of the Lord to be with him in the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite. The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, for 3 months. And the Lord blessed him and his entire household. And now King David was told that the Lord has blessed the household of Obed-Edom and everything he has because of the ark of God. So David went to bring up the ark of God from the house of Obed-Edom to the city of David with rejoicing. And when those who were carrying the ark of the Lord had taken 6 steps, he sacrificed the bull and a fattened calf, wearing a linen ephod. David was dancing before the Lord with all his might, while he and all Israel were bringing up the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sound of trumpets. Now, if you actually catch this story, so like I said, the story's moved on a bit now. Okay, the story's moved on quite a bit. And now, David was afraid to take the Ark of the Covenant. Do you know why? The Ark of the Covenant was such a special thing. And so even David didn't actually see that he was worthy of having this Ark. But however, Obed-Edom had it for 3 months and he was so blessed. He was so blessed when he had the Ark of the Covenant with him. David got jealous. David was like, oh my gosh, he's been so blessed. I need the ark back. So David went to get it back. It came back into the city of David. He's rejoicing. You know, the whole of Israel is rejoicing as well. And so they're sounding trumpets and all kind of things just because the ark of the Lord has returned. Okay, let me carry on. As ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, daughter of Saul, watched from a window. And there she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, and she despised him in her heart. Now remember, David is now king. So that means Saul is gone. Saul is gone. And David is now king. Remember, Michal is in the palace. But remember, she's not the only wife of David anymore. David has many wives. Many wives, Abigail being one of them. But David has many wives. So, you know, Michal was just left on her own in the palace. You know, even though she was the first wife of David, even though she'd rescued him, she despised him. She despised him because she probably didn't have him at all. She probably didn't have him. You know, like if you're a wife, you would actually sleep with your husband. You know, a king that had many wives, you would actually sleep with your husband at some point. And I don't think Michal ever got to sleep with David. And so he just left her by the side. Maybe he despised her because she was King Saul's daughter. Who knows? But now Michal, the woman who absolutely adored and doted so much on David, now despised him in her heart. She saw him coming into the city, rejoicing with the Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, rejoicing with the Ark of a Covenant. So this is from 2 Samuel now. So we're going down again. Okay, chapter 6, and I'll go from verse 17. So they brought the Ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. After he had finished sacrificing a burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Almighty. Then he gave a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins to each person in the whole crowd of Israelites. Both men and women and all the people went to their homes. When David returned home to bless his household, Michal, daughter of Saul, came out to meet him and said, "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today," and said, and going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as vulgar fellow would. So you can see now, she's a bitter woman. Michal has become a bitter woman. The man that she loved so much didn't actually give her any attention at all. So now she goes out to meet him and says how the king of Israel has distinguished himself today, going around half naked in full view of the slave girls of his servants, as any vulgar fellow would. So basically, he probably didn't have much clothes on. Maybe he had the bottom half on. Maybe he'd taken his top off. He's showing his good body, handsome, body. And so all the girls can, and all the women of Israel can actually see him and flaunt on him. So you can actually see she was quite jealous as well, because she actually called him, he was vulgar now. Remember, she despises him within her heart. But she's also jealous. She's envious of all the other women that catches his attention. She's actually become a bitter woman, a woman that has been scorned by her own husband, a woman that has been left by her own husband, a woman that is childless because her husband doesn't actually spend any time with her at all. So, yeah, like I said, this is actually quite a sad story, because she helped him. You got to remember that. She helped him escape from her father. Her father would have killed him. David wouldn't even be alive. He wouldn't even been seen to become king. But you remember, any prophecy by God will come true. Remember, David was anointed to become king. Samuel went out to anoint David as king. And David is now the king of Israel. He now has his own city. He now has a palace of people. He's got his own troops. Not only that, he's got all his wives and his concubines as well. So he doesn't really need Michal anymore. He doesn't really need her, because he has plenty of women to go around that would willingly be with him, even the slave girls. Yeah? So let me carry on. David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house, when he appointed me ruler over the Lord's people Israel. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. But by these slave girls you spoke of, I will be held in honor." This is what David is actually telling his first wife. He's telling his first wife, which we all know, God chose him. David was anointed to be king. David was more anointed and approved, right, and ordained by God more than Michal's father, King Saul. King Saul wasn't honored and appreciated like David. Yeah, David knew how special he was to God. Because if you can remember, King David was a man after God's own heart. So David couldn't actually do no wrong in God's eyes, even though he did do some wrong, which I've spoken about before with Bathsheba. But, in God's eyes, God loved David so much. And so, God blessed him. And God also blessed David's son, which was King Solomon, as we all know. So poor Michal, she marries this man, arranged by her father. She loved him. So it's almost like she hit the jackpot when she married David. She hit the jackpot. Because remember, David was a very good looking and handsome young man. So she'd actually hit the jackpot. She'd actually got the best warrior as well. A man soon to be king. She'd actually won the jackpot. But the jackpot was taken away from her. The jackpot didn't want her. The jackpot didn't even notice her. Even though she saved the jackpot didn't show her any appreciation for what she did, what she risked her own life for. He didn't show any appreciation for her saving his life from her father, King Saul. So yeah, this is the story of Michal. But it's not even over. Because it said in 2 Samuel, chapter 6, verse 23, and it says, "And Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death." Had no children. So yeah, so God kept her barren. God kept Michal barren. Maybe it was because she mocked David as he entered the city of David. Who knows? But yeah, she was never allowed to have children of her own. She was never allowed. So what does this story tell us? Should we do a little recap? Let's do a little recap. So Michal, she had a tremendous love for David. Yeah. She loved him so much. The Bible tells us just how much she loved him. She saved David from her father, who plotted to kill David time after time. But Michal helped him to escape. Michal had an arranged marriage with David. An arranged marriage. But not only did she have an arranged marriage with David, after that, after David fled, she was also given to another man called Paltiel, the son of Laish. Yeah, so she was actually given to another man after David fled. But guess what? Even after David fled, David asked for Michal back. Michal was, after all, David's possession. So what I'm asking the question is, if David didn't love Michal, why did he ask for her back? Why did he ask for Michal to be returned back to him? He didn't love the woman. I think King David saw Michal as part of his possession, part of his concubine, part of his wives. She was his first wife, so he wanted her back. Whether he'd slept with her or not, and she just still didn't have children, but he did want her back. He wanted her back. But their relationship, as you can see, was a little bit testy. Because if Michal started to despise him, then obviously something was wrong somewhere. Was it the fact that David couldn't stand her father? Every time he looked at, Michal, he saw King Saul. Who knows? But the fact of the matter is, David took her back. David took her back. Okay, so then, like you say, Michal scorned him. She said to him, "Who do you think you are? Flaunting yourself with all the slave girls, all in public. Yeah. Who do you think you are? How vulgar are you?" Yeah, she's basically cursing him. She's basically cursing the man. The king. That's what Michal's doing. Cursing the king. Yeah. But then upon cursing the king, because he paraded himself with not much clothes in front of all of Israel, she becomes barren. She becomes childless. Until the day of her death, she didn't have a child of her own. So that's quite sad, isn't it? It's very sad, this story. I've actually spoken about this story before, but, as I'm doing a walk in the Bible of women, I had to mention her again. So what do we learn about Michal, King David, and also her father, King Saul? What can we learn about this kind of scenario? Yeah. The one thing that I found from this was never let relationships affect your own personal relationship with God. Ever, ever, never, ever. This is a valuable lesson for us all to learn. A very valuable lesson. Never put anyone before God. Ever. Because that person could become an idol. Yeah? Never let anyone come before God. Not your partner. Not your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. Yeah? Not your boss. Not your pastor. Yeah? Or your minister. Yeah? No one. Not your teacher. Whoever it is. Do not let anyone come before God. This is a lesson for all of us. Yes, we can hold these people in high esteem. But do not ever, 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 never hold anyone up high above the Lord God Almighty. Why? Because you are serving God. You are not serving man. And you cannot serve God and man at the same time. God is first. God is your first love and your only ever love. Everyone and everything else comes after. Okay? Everyone and everything else comes after. And that's where the scripture also says, keep God in first place. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. Yeah? Seek first the kingdom of heaven before all things. All things. If only Michal had actually put God first before King David, before her father. If only. Her life may have been a little bit different. Her life may have been a little bit different. Did she actually trust God? Did she actually trust him? Did she honor God? Or is it because there was so much hatred in her heart, so much bitterness, that she couldn't even look at God? Because now she was left like a scorned and bitter woman. David didn't really love her. David just wanted her as a possession, something just to have in his household. Yeah. And then she was left barren, without any children. That was the punishment, could be, you know, of laughing and jeering and despising King David. What does the Bible say? Honor your father and your mother. And you must also honor your partner, your husband and your wife. The Bible tells us these things. It doesn't tell you to hate them. So maybe this is somewhere where she went wrong. Who knows? Who knows? But like I said, this is the story of Michal. And this is actually what happened to her in her life. It's quite sad, really. It's quite sad because all she ever wanted was love. All she ever wanted was to be loved by David. And she never had that. She never had that. She even deceived her own father for this man. But there was no love returned. No love was returned to her in this way. And so she began to hate him and despise him and even see him as vulgar. So it's quite a sad story, isn't it? But, you know, this story is something that happens to many women today. There's many women that have been left aside, put aside by their husbands or their partners, and they go off to have other women and more children. And some of these first wives or girlfriends, so to speak, ends up with no children at all. And so it's just really sad, isn't it? And even if some of the women had had children, they're still left becoming a single mother. A single mother because the man has not had any love for them. And so this is many women today, many, many millions of women around the world. This kind of story has happened to, you know, where their marriages have been arranged by their fathers and the man has just used them, you know, whether it is out of, you know, royalty, you know, back in the day, even today, it's the, you know, women, marriages are held in politics, isn't it? And even your enemies, you do, as you know, David was the enemy to Saul. So sometimes countries used to marry, marry off their sons and daughters to other people of other countries or other states so that there would be no war, there would be peace among the kingdoms. So this is quite a known thing, really, to be fair. Do you know what I mean? But, you know, King Saul really didn't want his daughter to marry David. He really wanted David to be killed. So really, King Saul just brought David closer to him in his household so that he could kill him. But remember, the Lord was with David. So David was never killed by the hands of Saul. David was never killed by the hands of King Saul. And like I said, if you are anointed and appointed by your Father in heaven, then no one can harm you. No one can lay a finger on you unless God says so. Unless God, you know. But most of the time, your plans and your purposes have to actually come to fruition. God's plans and purposes in your life has to come to fruition. Yeah. So whatever God has said for you guys, that is what is actually going to happen. So that's kind of the good news. Yeah, that's the good news. Whatever God has written out in your life, that's what's going to happen. And no one can stop that. No king, no man, woman, yeah, no witch, warlock, wizard. No one can actually stop what God has predestined for his own. And that leads me nicely on to what I normally say to you guys. You are a child of God. You are special, you are unique, and you are chosen, and you are very much loved by your Father in heaven. So may God continue to lead, guide, and protect you. May God bless you and just make his face just to shine upon you and give you perfect peace. Amen. So this is the end of my video today. I hope you've actually enjoyed this one. Like I said, it wasn't actually a great story for her, but you know what? This is life, isn't it? This is life. But this is actually what happens. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go now because I'm getting all hot and flustered. So guys, have a blessed week ahead and I'll see you all soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye. Bye.